Yo, 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 what's up, party people? Welcome to another episode of Thrive and Dive. Thriving in life as we dive into deeper conversations. This program exists to have people on that are thriving in life, and then we're going to dive into some topics and their stories so you too can thrive in your own life. And I'm joined by a power team today. These people have not been on Thrive and Dive yet, and I've been wanting them to be on Thrive and Dive for a while. So I'm so glad that we're finally making it happen. To my right, I've got Emily Dowd, and then to her right, we've got Nate Swearingen. Big round of applause. And this team is the dream team because this is actually the team that I get to work with at Pathway Church. Shout out to Pathway Church. And we're going to hear more from them. But to start things off, how are you doing, Emily?
I'm doing great.
Awesome. And Pastor Nate, how are you doing?
I'm doing awesome. This is great to be here.
Let's go. I'm so glad they're here. Actually, on the day we're filming this, we've been apart from each other for a good week, if not more, because we're on vacation. So before we jump into our topic of conversation, Pastor Nate, I believe you were on a cruise this past week. Do tell us, give us a Spark Notes version. How was that cruise?
Cruise was amazing. Weather was amazing. Honestly, we ate very well. It was so relaxing. It was nice. Yeah.
Ate like kings. How was the company?
Company? Ooh. No, that wasn't the best. No, it was awesome. We had a blast. Seriously, it was awesome. Yeah, so much fun.
That's awesome. And Emily, how was your week this past week?
It was great.
I don't know if you did anything cooler than a cruise, but what were you up to this past week?
I went to a college visit with Edie at FSU.
Shout out to Edie,
Go
Emily's
Noles.
daughter.
Nice.
Let's
And
go.
Then I went and visited a friend in Apalachicola. So
Apalachicola?
Apalachicola.
Where's that at?
It's
That's
in the
like a foreign country.
Yeah.
It's like an hour and a half west, southwest. It's on the coast.
Okay.
Nice.
On
Still
the coast.
Florida, Panhandle.
Barely.
Yeah.
Barely makes it. It's still,
very
it was
cool.
like a 7-hour drive probably.
Yeah. Oh, 6.5.
That's crazy.
Yeah.
Florida's
It was
so
fun.
big that it can take 6.5 hours to get to one spot to
Yeah.
another. Wild. Cool. Well, before we jump into our topic of conversations, I would love for the Thrive and Divers, what we call our audience, to know a little bit more about the people that are on Thrive and Dive. So pretend that nobody knows you. I know that's hard for you, Pastor Nate, since you're pretty much a celebrity in Vero Beach. But pretend someone actually doesn't know you, right? What are some things that they must know about you to get a complete picture of who you are? So we'll start with Pastor Nate, and then we'll go to Emily.
Oh, wow. Yeah, there's a lot. Most of all, which is really cool is Winnie and I just celebrated 21 years of marriage. So that's really
go.
cool. So we're excited.
Clap.
Yeah. And then we have 2 kids, Banks and Ava. And so it's really cool where they're at in seasons. And so then we've been doing this student ministry thing now. Hard to believe, but we've been doing it now 22 years. I was just thinking about it a lot as we were away and just thinking about how much, this has been our life. And we're grateful to be a part of it. And so that's a little bit about me and just thankful to be on Thrive and Dive.
Let's go. Also a big Ohio State fan, as you can see by the
Die
jacket.
hard, Ohio State. Let's go.
Die hard. Yes. And Emily, what about you? What do people need to know about you?
Ooh, let's see. I am a wife, a mom, got a dog. I don't know.
Yeah.
Nice.
Love the Lord, and I love serving students, the youth. Yeah.
Let's go.
That's awesome.
So as they both already alluded to, they both work in youth ministry. Nate said for 22 years now.
Hard to believe.
That's awesome. He's our next gen pastor, the official title at Pathway Church. Fancy schmancy over here.
Love official titles.
Yeah, gotta love it. It's a cool version of a youth pastor. But he's been in the youth ministry game for a long time, longer than some of you guys have been alive,
True.
right?
That's very true.
And then Emily has worked at Pathway Church for 2 years now in youth ministry as well. And do you have any other youth ministry working experience apart from Pathway Church? Just out of curiosity, I actually don't know this.
Actually, not apart from Pathway. No, I've been serving here, volunteering here with the youth for, I think, 6 years since Lucy was
Wow.
in 7th grade when I
Yeah.
started. So, but not at a different church in youth.
Awesome, super cool.
Yeah.
And then I am entering into my 2nd year in youth ministry at Pathway Church. Previously was a teacher, as you guys know, and I've been volunteering with Pastor Nate really since he moved here to Vero Beach in
17.
2017.
Over 7 years now.
Yeah, which is crazy to think about. Wow, how fast time is flying. I actually remember, Pastor Nate, the first time I met you was at the Chick-fil-A mall.
Let's go.
Yeah.
I missed that place, man. I missed that place.
No longer
so much.
there. Rest in peace.
Oh, I was there all the time.
I remember meeting you first time there. You and Patrick, who is a good friend of yours and was on staff at the time at Pathway Church, and then Mark Simserat, who's also a good friend.
People right there.
Yeah, and I'm like, man, wow, Pathway Student Ministries is going downhill.
Yeah.
Yeah, these crazy clowns over here.
Thank the Lord for a lot of prayer. So,
A lot of prayer, no, but it's crazy to think that that's 7 years ago now.
Wow.
And I'm very thankful for all you've invested in me, Pastor Nate, and thankful for you, Emily, as well, as we've worked together for the past year, and then also at a volunteer capacity for the past 6 years, like you said. So I am thankful that they have taken their time to come on Thrive and Dive, and that's what we're going to talk about today is youth ministry, especially with 22 years of experience, right? Pastor Nate has a wealth of knowledge. I'm sure he wants to steward, and I'm sure he's sharing with people as he goes. I know for me personally, I'm benefiting from his expertise, right? You're a professional youth pastor, right? I don't know at what point someone becomes a professional.
That, but it's fun to do life together.
Yeah, absolutely. And so that's what we're going to talk about because we work together. And so if you are someone in youth ministry or aspiring to be in youth ministry, or if you're a student in youth ministry, you get to see kind of the behind the scenes of what actually goes down in youth ministry. We're not just goofing off and playing around during the work week. We actually do stuff. So yeah, that's going to be our topic of conversations, which we'll jump into some smaller subtopics, but that's the overarching topic, youth ministry. And I want to start things off, Pastor Nate and Emily, talking about a trip that we went on as Pathway students. Pathway students is the name of our youth group. And we went to something called Passion Camp in Daytona Beach, Florida, put on by Passion City Church. Shout out to Louis Giglio. And I'd love to start this conversation off by talking about, why do we do youth trips? Why are they so important? Because they're a lot of work, right? We know how much work the Passion Camp to put on was. Why do we do that? And then I'd love that question to usher into, how was the Passion Camp experience this past year? So any of you guys can start and jump in whenever you have a thought.
Yeah, I think, James, you've mentioned this a lot, but the biggest thing is that to do a trip, no matter what the trip is that it's important that there's always purpose and reasoning behind everything you do. And so the trips, there's a reason and a purpose why we do this. Of course, we want every student to go to have an encounter with Jesus Christ. Maybe it's they start a relationship with Jesus, or it's something to further their relationship, to become more of a disciple of Christ. And so those are huge, but also just your group in general, like how do they grow together? How do they come back with what Christ has done in their life? But also as they've built relationships, they bring that back and hopefully get more people involved. Be like, hey, you got to be a part of this community. This is something that like has changed my life of what Christ has done, and this community has helped lift me up, and that's important. And so for us, for Passion Camp, there again, I'll let Emily and you speak to it too. Is it's hard to believe, but we started this, 5 years ago, actually a little bit longer because of, unfortunately, COVID in there. But our prayer from the beginning, of the first one that we did is that it just wouldn't be a moment, it'd be a movement. And that was our prayer. And that's really our prayer for any trip that we do. But this trip specifically is that this just isn't a moment. This just isn't 1 week at Daytona Beach in the middle of the summer and that's it. No, this is a movement in our own personal lives and what he can do in that. And then it's a movement to bring it back and pathway and bring that movement in Pathway students / for us, Vero Beach, Treasure Coast, and beyond. And so that's why these trips or those trips, whatever it may be that we've done, are so important. And Passion Camp's kind of been our thing. Like I said, this is our 5th year going. It's grown every year. We've seen God do great things. We took 150 this past year, which is crazy. Awesome God stuff. And for us, I think, and I know I'm sharing a lot here, is that I believe we're living an answered prayer of that movement that we prayed for, to see where we started and where we are. Obviously numbers get weird, and especially in ministry and youth ministry, but it does still tell a story.
Yeah.
And we've seen that story being told is that we prayed from day one, 5/6 years ago, that it would be that movement. And we've seen those students bring that back for our weekly student ministry, but then also for Passion Camp, to where we took 153 charter buses this year. That's a crazy God thing that we couldn't do. As talented as we think we are, and however many years we've been involved in student ministry, to think, oh, we got it together and we don't, that comes down to all right, Lord, will you just do what you need to do and let us be obedient to what you're telling us, and we'll do the behind the scenes hard work, because it was a lot of hard work, and it is a lot of hard work that nobody does see, and that's anything for that matter, right? But that's what's cool, is to see God allow us to live in that answered prayer and in that movement, and praying that the movement hasn't stopped and that it's going to continue this year and as we go into next year of what we see and think that God has for us for Passion Camp again in 2025. So that's a little bit of my take. Emily or James, you want us to share anything?
Yeah, that's good. I was just thinking, it's not about us. It's nothing that we're doing. We're just, helping along and being obedient to God's plan and, joining him in his work. But it's not us. It's the Lord. Just thinking of like why we do it. It's a different experience, other than like not that what we're doing in our regular weekly deal isn't cool or fun or amazing. Of course it is, but it's nice to get out and see different experiences and see how they worship and see how that, just hearing different messages from different people, different people connect with different speakers and that kind of thing. And it's kind of neat to get out of your normal comfort zone and kind of bond with your group and, just all come together. It's just really cool.
Yeah, absolutely. I concur with all that. Two things I want to highlight from what you guys said. Pastor Nate, the phrase, let this not be a moment, but a movement, is so powerful. And it seems so simple. And maybe to an outsider, oh, that's cute. Movements in a moment, woo, right? But it is the ethos behind why we do what we do. We don't want to send kids to a 1 week experience, and that's it. It's just the experience, right? They had a great mountaintop experience. They had a great encounter with the Lord. When they get home, nothing changes. Yeah. In my mind, that's not productive, right? We want to give kids the tools so they can bring back what they learned at camp to their Monday through Friday life, right? Sure. And we're seeing that. Like you said, Pastor Nate, I even think of last Passion Camp last year and just the momentum we had from that in our student ministries on Wednesdays and Sunday nights. Middle schoolers meet on Wednesdays, high schoolers on Sunday nights. And even our leaders, right? And then how charged up and ready they are. We are living in a movement, right? This isn't something that we hope to see one day, God willing, revival will break out and we'll see a movement of God and then the next generation here in Vero Beach at Pathway students. No, this is something we're actually seeing now. For sure. And we're witnessing, and I always love, Pastor Nate, how you take the time for us to take the time to, let's just thank God for this, right? Let's not miss this, chasing after the next new big thing. Yeah. Let's really soak this up and praise God. So that's important. That's good. And something you said, Emily, that I think is super crucial as well is Passion Camp, or any youth trip for that matter, it doesn't have to be Passion Camp, is so important because it takes students out of their normal habitat and experience something different, right? That's why so much life change happens on these trips, is that students are taking a step back from the busyness and chaos. And some of these kids have some crazy households and are living in craziness. And it gives them an opportunity to step out of that and experience restoration, experience solitude even, experience what biblical community looks like for a week. And then they can take that and hopefully change the culture of wherever they're at, whether it's their house, home, youth group for that matter. So, yeah.
Yeah, it's awesome. Yeah, it's great.
With that being said, what was your guys' favorite part of Passion Camp? I know that's kind of a hard question because there's so many great things that happened, but if you were kind of to narrow it down to one piece from our trip this past July, what would be your favorite part?
Well, I'll just say for me, I think, I guess being, like you said, we were having fun with it, but just being next gen pastor / really like the overall youth pastor of it. And after doing it for these years and getting old now, I guess, for me, I think it's the biggest thing is that really, truly being a part of a community like this, to look back, sit back and just see, you were talking about some people that we mentioned and seeing over 7+ years of us doing this together, but really truly seeing that community. And so for me, the favorite part for me is just seeing all of our youth leaders, like all of them giving up time, taking vacation to go on this trip, do this. Then all of our students, many of them that we've known for a while, some of them fairly new, they come in, and just to see them grow in their relationship with Christ, some come to know Christ. And really my favorite part is to look back and be like, man, I get to be a part of this. Like, this is the family that I want to be a part of. Like, this is the way it should be. When they talk about family and church family and the family of God, like, we're living in it. Like, man, I'm just grateful that I'm a part of it, and it's not about like, oh, I'm the leader of it or nothing. It's like, no, everyone has their part. Everyone plays their role. And I think that's just my favorite part. I mean, to to take that many and to see all that God did, we got to know each other. I mean, you know, whatever it is, like, right? Yeah, of course, we're praising, raising our hands, we're praying, we're doing our little like Devo things kind of afterwards and reflection. But then it's like, oh man, we're on the beach throwing a football to each other and just hanging out, like just talking. Like that's just great. Oh, we're going to IHOP late at night. You know, that's it. So really. Favorite part, I said a lot, but favorite part is just being a part of that family/community that we have, that God's allowed us to help create, living in that answered prayer again.
Amen. Well, it's interesting, Pastor Nate. We've had the privilege, because we've been around Pathway students for so long, to see high schoolers go through the program, go away from college, and come back. And it's funny, sometimes I remember in some of our conversations late night after youth group, we're just, you know, shooting the breeze, talking. And what is the topic of conversations on so many of those stories? Past youth trips.
Yep.
They're reminiscing. Oh, remember that time at Passion Camp we did this?
Yeah.
Remember that time we did this? And it's created lasting memories that they're still like nostalgic about. Not that they're super old now, but eventually down the road when they're like, you know, 60, back in my day, we went on this youth trip and it was great, right? Gives them stories to talk about. And trips that are talked about meant that there was a lasting impact.
For sure.
So that's so important.
And they're going to share those stories too with, you know, other friends or future generations maybe. Or,
Amen.
You know,
Yeah. And what about you, Emily? What was your favorite part, or one of the favorite parts?
Just seeing kids like just come to the Lord, you know, kids that you never thought would be raising their hands, or, you know, the last one you thought that was going to stand up and accept Christ, or, you know, just seeing that life change, like that is the best. It's amazing. Yeah. And also worship. I mean, for me, I love worship, so that's my favorite part. But yeah, just seeing, and even the leaders too, you know, just seeing people just grow in the Lord. It's beautiful.
Amen to that. I think my favorite part, you know, obviously Emily said the best answer, Pastor Nate. She said the salvation, and people come to the Lord, so she kind of beat you there.
Yeah, for sure.
But one of my favorite parts is, you guys have already alluded to it, but seeing the bonding happening between the leaders and the students.
Yeah.
Obviously, we're tilling the soil all year, building relationships with these kids. But this like week-long experience is kind of like the climax, right?
Yeah.
Where they get to do life on life with the student in ways that they'd never be able to before, due to schedules, school, things like that get in the way. You know, we all have to work, unfortunately, right?
Yeah.
There's an opportunity to kind of remove those barriers and have that authentic experience. And it kind of even reminds me, Pastor Nate, a book that Pastor Nate gifted to me a couple months ago is a book called Practicing the Way by John Mark Comer. And I'm not going to get into the entirety of the book, but one of the premises of the book is talking about discipleship should look like an apprenticeship style, where you're not just teaching this person you're discipling, you're not just teaching the students, all right, here we in the book of Galatians, we're doing this, which is important. Don't get me wrong. Teaching is very important. But a big part of it is doing life with your disciple that you're trying to disciple.
100%.
Right? And Passion Camp and things like that provide an opportunity to go to IHOP with them, right? Like, how much are they soaking in? Wow, I'm eating at IHOP with Mike Pickerel. Shout out to Mike Pickerel, right? Like, I've never done this before, right?
Yeah.
And just, I know for me, when I was in youth ministry as a student, because I'm a product of these youth trips, so that's why I just believe so passionately about them. You know, a lot of the times where I learned and grew was not necessarily the sessions, as important as they were, but it was in that in-between time, hanging out with my youth leaders, doing life with them, seeing them like the real them, right? Not like a polished version. Like, it's the real them. It's so cool. So that's one of my favorite parts for sure. Switching gears a little bit from Passion Camp, I want to just go back to youth ministry in general. And this is going to be kind of a rapid fire thing. So you share what you want to share, but within your guys' experience, whether it's 20 years or 7 years, or for me, 7 years as well, what has been, if you were to give advice to somebody who is contemplating about pursuing youth ministry, whether at a volunteer role or whether actually as a profession, or even just a parent wanting to know more about what is this? What am I sending my kids to, right? This youth group stuff. This is weird. What is this? What advice would you give? What are the biggest lessons that you've learned from your experience with youth ministry? What's the best way to reach kids? I know there's a lot of questions wrapped into one, but basically I'm looking for, if you were to give advice and encouragement to somebody pursuing youth ministry, what would you tell them?
Well, there's a lot of things I would say, and I'm not sure we'll have all the time, but I think some of the things that I would share briefly, and I know it's a lot in my head and heart to share, is some of the non-negotiables, you know, and what those would be is that they're going to be different for everybody. And so, but you find what it is for you, what God's calling you to do, not what someone else is telling you. Podcasts are great. We're doing it, right? This is awesome. Books are great, all that. All those are super important. And you've already referenced many things that we've already done together. And obviously we're doing this together. But what is it that God's telling you? You as the leader, you as the one being called. So if you're being called into student ministry / youth ministry, what is it that he's calling you to do, and you do what he's called you to do? And so for us, that looks different for everybody. But for us, there's some things that there, again, have been impactful over time, things that we've learned. You know, we have this core value, and there again, it came from a book. It's called The Cure, a book called The Cure. And it's, what if there was a place so safe that the worst of me could be known, and I would not be loved less, but I would be loved more by the telling of it? Meaning, doesn't matter what I've done. If I walk in somewhere or I'm a part of that community, that family we've talked about, is that I can tell the worst of me to that community. I can tell the worst of me to that place. And I would find out that they would not love me less, but they would love me more because I'm open and honest and authentic and telling that, whatever that is. So it doesn't matter who you are, where you come from, what side of the tracks you've been raised on, any of those things, you are welcome here. And so we say that a lot at church. We say that a lot at youth groups. We say that a lot. We want to live out the gospel. We want to live that out and welcome everyone and come as you are and all those things. But the sad truth is, if we really get down to it, we've probably failed that many times, because whether we like to admit it or not, to be truthful is that we do, when people walk in our church, we do judge them right away when they walk in. When that student walks in and you know they're a lot, you know they maybe have some things that is going to take extra time. You have a decision to make. Oh, is this the one we're going to pursue? Yeah. And we're going to pursue them no matter what? Or is it, you know what, we're going to try and pursue the easy ones? So it could be someone, could be a student with special needs. It could be a student that comes from a home life that's going to cause a lot of chaos. And it's going to take a while to find that structure and discipline for them. And most of all, maybe even a while for them to come to know Christ. And so there's so much with that. And I could go forever and talk for days on that. But that we would live that out. We would live out the gospel. You know, we would live all that out. And that's just one quote from the book that we have hanging up here in our student ministry. It's a core value. But I share this a lot as well. And I share this even when I do premarital counseling with couples before I do their wedding and stuff, which I'm grateful to always have the opportunity as a pastor to do weddings and to perform those ceremonies and marriages. But I talk about intruders, and there's going to be intruders in your marriage. And the same thing happens in life, but also ministry. Yeah. And it's, what are those intruders that are going to come in and try to distract, derail, discourage you? And you got to be ready and know and find those intruders. But the reason I bring that up is the same thing I say for my own home, which, not saying we're batting 1,000, but I try to say to these couples, and I try to say it to us as a team. And I've always tried to say it to even our overall group. But the student ministry room / building is that it would be a place of peace. We can't control anything that happens on the student's turf, wherever their turf is, their school, their home. We can help guide them and direct them, but we can't necessarily always go there and help determine that. But we can determine the turf that God has called us to be a part of, and we can determine that to be a turf of peace. So when a student comes in and their home is chaos, when the school is chaos, or whatever it may be in their life, is that when those intruders try to come our way or come our students' way, is that we'll say, Lord, we've prayed over this building, we've prayed over this service, we've prayed over this event, we've prayed over this team, we've prayed over our leaders enough to know that when an intruder comes, that we'll be ready, whatever the intruder is, that we'll be ready, and we'll say that this still is a place of peace. Now, does that mean we're batting 1,000? No, that's not what I'm saying. But it means also that there's going to be days, and this is where maybe you're going to get to eventually, there's going to be days that maybe I walk in and there's an intruder that maybe, whatever that intruder is, maybe it's an intruder of lack of sleep, I don't know, whatever that could be. I'm going to walk in and I may not be my best, but I'm praying and hoping that maybe both of you are your best that day, or one of you are your best that day, and you're going to bring me up and lift me up. And that's why it's important to have a team that we have here. We're blessed to have this team. We're grateful to have this team. And that's what a good team does, is that no matter what's happening and maybe one person's down or going through something, the other people are lifting up. And I pray that's the same when I talk about this family. That's the same for our youth leaders, our students. I may come in and it may be a student that lifts me up, it may be a youth leader. And so those are things that I think that are important, is that we truly, truly are true to the gospel. We're true to saying we're going to love all people. It doesn't matter who or what they've done or what they've been through. We're going to love them. We are going to love them. And that takes sacrifice. That takes time. That takes effort. And in today, it's hard to find. It really is. And it's sad. And we're not saying that we have it down. That's not what we're saying at all. We're just saying we're trying, we're striving. Also, I think it's an old John Maxwell quote, but Dave Ramsey says a lot: if you aim at nothing, you'll hit it every time. and I think for us is that we know what we're aiming for. We know our goals. We know what God's called us to do. We know what we're striving for. And so those things are important. And it just goes back to that whole thing of peace, is that, obviously this isn't about marriage, but it'd be the same for your home or marriage. Make it a place of peace. Don't let intruders in your home. You can control anything that happens in your home. And the same for us as that student ministry, is that we're not going to try to allow any of those intruders to come and mess up this team, mess up our youth leaders, our students. And we're going to pray over this building, and we're going to pray over everything we do. So that was a long 10-minute answer, but I could go on for a lot longer. But anyhow,
No, that's good. And there's so many things we could go deeper into, Pastor Nate, and I want to recap some of it. Before that, Emily, thoughts from you. Biggest lessons you've learned in youth ministry. What advice would you give?
I think I just, coming into this, felt so underqualified, or like, I'm not a pastor, or I'm not like qualified to do this. I kind of felt like I wasn't, gifted or anything like that. But what I've learned is just relationship. What all these students are seeking is relationship, really. And kind of going to the quote that you talked about, it's just, they want to be accepted. They want to be loved, and just pointing them to Jesus and showing them, just the love of Christ, being that love of Christ for them, whether it's just listening or, pointing them to Jesus. I think just relationship and authenticity. And that kind of creates, it kind of goes from there, and then, everything else kind of falls into place. But for me, that's it.
That's good. That's good. So circling back to what you shared, Nate, then back to you, Emily. Two things that stood out to me, Pastor Nate. The first thing, when it comes to dabbling in youth ministry, you feel the Lord leading you to that. Blaze your own trail, not in the sense of do your thing, like in submission to the Lord, but don't try to copycat someone else, right? I know for me, when I first started teaching at a school here, Master's Academy, I wanted so bad to copy the previous chaplain, which that was my position. I was a chaplain. So I think, what would he do? Well, how would he have done this? He did it so well. And I lived under that pressure that person wasn't trying to put on me. He was gone by this point, and nobody was putting that pressure on me. But for me, I'm like, I got to do what someone else has done that's been successful. And like you're saying, Pastor Nate, no, you be you. Yeah. Right? God has gifted you with skills, talents, and abilities. Run into those things. I think you mentioned John Maxwell. I think in one of his books, he mentions, like, don't be someone you're not. Yeah. And that goes back to even your authenticity, Emily. No, be the authentic you God has made you to be, in submission to the Lord, right? I'm not saying do you. Live your truth. That's not what I'm saying. But own your style. Don't try to copy someone else. Yeah. Another thing you said, Pastor Nate, that value of ours, our place be so safe that someone can come and bare their soul with their leader and their students. And that's what sets apart youth group from just any other social institution, right? In my opinion, we're going to have fun. We're going to hang out. We're going to do crazy games, 100%. But we're going to get real. We're going to do life with each other. And that's only possible. That's contingent on how safe the student feels. If the student doesn't feel safe and doesn't want to open up, then we're missing the mark, right? We're doing something wrong, whether we're being too judgmental and not allowing them the opportunity to be open, or we're not creating space for them to do that. It's all just craziness. So that's important. I'm so glad we emphasize that, because that's what takes, acquaintance level relationships to like actual friendships, is going into that deeper thing where we can do life with each other and speak the truth in love. We're not letting, you've said this multiple times, Pastor Nate, in youth ministry, we're not going to love, we're not going to keep the student where they're at, right? We're going to help them grow in their relationship with the Lord, because that'd be unloving to let them just sit in their mess. Like, we know about their mess and we're just letting them sit in the mess. No. but we're providing a space where the mess can be made known.
100%.
And we're not going to jump on them
100%.
when the mess is made known. So that's super important.
Love them the way they are when they walk in. Don't let them stay there.
Amen.
And that's the key. And
Yep.
so, sometimes, so many times, whatever it is, life, especially in the church world, someone walks in, we try to help change them right away.
Right.
And that could maybe,
Yeah.
but it's like, hey, let me take the journey with you.
Take the
Yeah.
journey.
Let me walk alongside of you, which is back to what you're saying, discipleship, apprenticeship.
Yep.
Like, man, let's do this together. Let's get some youth leaders and other people that love you and pray for you in your life. That's key. So,
Yeah. It's the difference between trying to like microwave somebody or give them
100%.
in the smoker and
100%.
sizzle for a
Yeah,
little bit, take the
100%.
journey.
Always
Yeah.
better in the smoke.
Amen.
Yeah.
And then, Emily, what you said really is kind of the core behind everything we do here at Pathway Students specifically, but should be the core and heart behind anyone does in ministry is the relationship authenticity piece, right? I could like we even alluded to, Pastor Nate. We could brag on how much experience Pastor Nate has. We could brag on how much education somebody has.
Yeah.
We can brag about all that someone's accomplished. But if the student doesn't know that person cares for them,
Yep.
it's all meaningless.
Yep.
The quote I remember I heard when I first started teaching as a teacher was kids don't care what you know until they know that you care.
Yeah.
So I can know a lot of stuff up here and be very well educated and a good communicator for that matter. But if the students don't sense that you actually authentically care about them,
100%.
you're in the wrong. We're in the people business, right?
I've never once had a student walk in and ask me about my education. Not once over the years of student ministry. All that's important. Please know. Yeah, go to school, get all that, degrees, all that. But I'm saying I've never had one student walk in and say that to me. Nothing. Or after we've walked together for a while, say anything. No, it's, how much do you really care about me? How much do you really want to know about me? Do you really want to know, like, maybe how messed up it is? Or maybe not. But do you really want that? So
And like
all those things are important, but like, that's it. Back to that quote, which is, I think, another John Maxwell quote. So.
Probably. If you're watching this, let us know.
Big shout out. We're not sponsoring him, by the way.
Yeah,
or anything.
but like you said though, that care, that authentic care, that takes time and effort and energy,
100%.
right? Getting into the mess with somebody
100%.
is not easy. Like we can say, yeah, I love you, yeah, I'm there for you, but when push comes to shove, when an opportunity arises for you to actually get in the dirt with them,
100%.
that's hard. I'm being honest with you guys on Thrive and Dive, right?
No, it's true. It's like, will you show up in the middle of the night for me?
Yeah, right.
Will you show up in the middle of the night?
Yeah.
I mean, who is it? Can you name those people that will show up for you? Whatever. Forget even youth ministry.
Right.
Out there, your group of friends, whoever. Who is it that's showing up for you in the middle of the night?
Yeah.
That's it. That's why this family, this thing is different, and why we got to have it. Now, man, there again, I'm not ever saying we're batting 1,000 here.
Right.
That's not what we're saying. We're not saying we got it down. We're saying, hopefully we've built a big enough community that if I can't show up or you can't show up or Emily can't show up, maybe it's a youth leader. Maybe it's another student.
100%.
That's what we're saying. Like,
Yeah.
it's a family. It's not, this isn't built on the three of us.
Exactly, because we know our limitations. We can't be that pastor to every student, unfortunately, in the truest sense of authentic. Like we can't be up answering phone calls every night. So that's why we empower
100%.
our team, our youth leaders, and even our student leaders to recreate what we are trying to create.
100%.
So
Yeah.
that's good leadership.
No, that's great, man. That's good stuff.
Awesome. Switching gears one more time. It's already been alluded to. We've talked about our team, right? We're in the student Pathway Students team. Do we have an official name? I don't know. Next Gen team. But there's some others who are not represented in this podcast that's on the Next Gen team. But we've already talked a little bit about, man, some of the things that makes this team work out well. Like, not trying to like brag on us or pat ourselves on the back, but for all things considered, I feel like we do a pretty good job, right? Like you said before, we're not batting at 1,000.
Yep.
We're not perfect. We're teachable, and we're hopefully humble enough to realize our limitations and areas of growth. And sometimes we've had those hard conversations, and but for the most part, we're a pretty well-oiled machine. Why is that? And how can someone who maybe is not as well-oiled as us, what can they glean from us? What can we share with them so they can start being that well-oiled machine? And I know we only got like 15 minutes left on this podcast, and this could be a longer topic of conversation, but just the short version of what do you think makes us tick so well?
Well, there's a lot of things we talk a lot about here around our place is humble, hungry, spirit-led, those types of things. There's a lot of words or things that we could say or use. But definitely for me is that somebody that I know that is humble to learn, humble to be willing to admit mistakes. Those things are key. So I think what makes us a great team is that we're willing to say, man, I blew that. Like, I could have done better. And then usually when that happens, it's like, most times it's like, oh, thank you for sharing. But actually, I didn't think it was that bad. But because of that, and because you're humble enough to share that, it just makes me want to like go bigger and better and stronger for you and for us. And because it's like, oh, like I know. And the biggest thing is to know we have each other's backs. We're there for each other. We want the best for the students, the youth leaders, this overall ministry. And it's a sad thing to say, but to me, back to the humble, is that I don't feel that there's any pride. And man, when there's pride, you'll see it, and usually it will dismantle a team. And it's sad that there's pride in the church and ministry, but it happens. We're all sinners, and we all have it maybe in different ways. And not saying none of us have it. I'm just saying that I think we're all working and striving daily not to have it, and also being humble enough to say, if I do, this team is willing to call me out on it. And so I think those are some of the big keys. I could, like you said, this is we could go on for days, and I'll have more to share, but I want to have time for you guys. So that's some of my quick thoughts.
Awesome. Emily, for you?
Yeah, I think leadership. I think you do a really great job of being a good leader, and just giving us room to, kind of do our thing and guide us, of course, have bumpers, but, kind of give us the freedom and lift us up, I guess. You're very encouraging. I think that's important. That's nice to hear. And just James, you're funny. And I think just having fun, just not making everything so serious
100%.
And, just keeping the main thing. And all the other stuff is just, it's not like big deal breakers or anything.
Yeah, I want, before James answers, I want to say something. Not the funny part. I don't agree with that. No, but no, I'm teasing.
James the comedian.
No, I love it. I think what you said, Emily, is key. Is that there's a lot of different quotes or something you could use, but like if you enjoy what you do, you never work a day in your life, kind of thing. The old thing. But I think what you're saying is that, man, I look forward to showing up with this team every day. It should be fun, and ministry should be fun, and life should be fun. And like we get to, and God allows us to have a ton of fun, and it's a joy to do what we get to do. So that's what you said. That's super key.
Amen. Yes, a lot of thoughts, and man, we can unpack a lot of these things. But I think the biggest thing with all these things we're sharing is just that we're all, again, we're not batting on 1,000. We'll say that multiple times because we want to make sure our humility is expressed here. Yeah. But we are, all things considered, very consistent with the values we hold to. It's not just something we say or we aspire to do, but it's actually something we intentionally try to do, right? In the little decisions. Because a lot of times team dynamics and the friction that we experience amongst teams is based on the little decisions, not based on big monumental shifts or changes or whatever. Right. While that can cause conflict, usually it's a little day-to-day communication or little day-to-day responses to things or little day-to-day tone of voice, whatever it might be. And I think that humble, hungry, spirit-led, which comes from Patrick Lencioni's book, The Ideal Team Player. And we as a church have added the spirit-led component to the humble, hungry. And another component from that book, actually, he talks about is being smart, which you got to read the book for yourself. I'm not going to unpack the whole thing on this podcast, but Patrick Lencioni talks about having good people skills, good emotional intelligence, and just being aware of your blind spots, being aware when you're becoming defensive, being aware when you're pushing blame on other people, whatever it might be, right? And for the most part, I mean, I haven't worked with you guys super long time, but enough to know that, man, like you said, Nate, if we messed up, we're going to take ownership of it. And I know that's hard for me sometimes. I'm like, well, I just want to blame something different, my lack of experience, or the student was crazy. Come on, I was tired, my OCD, my ADD, whatever you want to throw at the problem, right? It's just that taking responsibility for our actions and then having the open discussions. I know it's not always easy, even for a team like this, right? Where I'm very comfortable with you, Nate and Emily, but calling each other out is still not easy, right? But it is the most loving thing and the most beneficial thing we can do for our team. And I know we've had, specifically you and me, Nate, had conversations about different things that I need to work on and you need to work on and stuff. And it's not fun. It's like no one really ever enjoys it. But we have that circle of safety that Simon Sinek actually talks about in his book Leaders Eat Last, where we're just we know we have each other's backs, right? So what I say to Nate is not, I don't have a gripe against him or a point to prove. I'm really calling this out on him because I do love him and I want to see us become better.
For sure. Well, I think also with that, I know we're running out of time, is a book that we just recently read, The Self-Aware Leader by Terry Linhart, I believe is the last name. And I think it's just to make sure, like you were saying, it's really key that we are self-aware of those blind spots. We are self-aware of some of those things. But then the key to that is that we bring people in to let other people know, like, hey, this is where some things I need to work on. Will you help me hold me accountable? And that accountability is huge. That's where us as a team, you can build that team beyond this.
Sure.
Like we're saying, hey, here's some things. But the biggest thing with that is always leading. And so maybe you're watching this and you're like, oh, I'm the assistant youth person or I'm whatever. And this is key. This is what I encourage all them to do to me, is that lead up. You have to lead up, because if you lead up, you're going to, for me in my role, you make me better. So unless your leader is an insecure leader or somebody like that, it's a whole different topic of discussion.
Sure. Yeah.
But I'm saying is like, I'm asking them to lead up, because if they lead up and they're holding me accountable and stuff, that's going to make me better. And then hopefully I'm doing the same for them. And so those are some of those things that I think that makes us a good team, is that we're constantly growing, whatever that looks like. And when I say we're growing, you may have listened to a podcast or read a book, or maybe it's just your quiet time, or maybe it's what God is, a sermon or through worship, and you come to me and you're like, man, this is what God's doing in my life. Here's some things I saw, like, oh, wow, that's great. I never thought of it that way or seen it that way. So just always leading and leading up, even if you're not the main leader out there. So that's key. That's what makes us a great team.
I want to say one more thing.
Absolutely.
One thing too that I really appreciate and think is important is, sometimes you come in and you do have a bad day or something else is going on. And I think just making room for that, of like, hey, no, let's talk about this, instead of like, no, we got to get to work or and it comes back to that relationship of just, that's something I have really appreciated with both of you guys. Of like, if there's something going on personally, or, like, hey, let's talk about it, instead of, just kind of moving on with the day.
Yeah, that's good.
It's good, yeah, because we all have lives outside of youth ministry, right? Yeah. Youth ministry isn't life, right? Yeah. And if we separate that and it becomes professional and personal, and there's a separation between the two, we never kind of mingle the two, then how are we going to grow closer as a team if we don't know what's happening with each other personally? I'm not saying you got to bare your soul with everybody, but if you have a close team like us, hopefully you have the comfortability and the trust to be able to share the personal stuff in your life.
For sure, 100%. Yeah.
Any closing thoughts, Nate and Emily, as we wrap up this episode of Thrive and Die? Final things that you feel the viewers should know about youth ministry or your life personally, or I don't know, a fun fact about you.
Well, I think the last thing I'd say is that I love doing what I get to do, what God's called me to do. It's a passion of mine. I'm passionate about what we do here. Literally dedicated my life, and I'm grateful that God has allowed me to dedicate my life to this. And so maybe you are watching this and maybe you're following James on his Thrive and Dive. I would love to have a conversation, call, email, whatever. We can get all that out. We'd love to talk. And the thing is that back to it again is that we're a bunch of crazy people that God has chosen to use. We're not doing it perfect. We don't have it all together. Yeah. We mess it up all the time. What we're saying is we're learning every day. And if you'd be willing and want to, we'd love to learn with you every day. And usually this is what I say when people ask me about youth ministry. I'll tell you all the things I did wrong so you don't do them. And so really that's what it comes down to. So it's just a joy to do this with you guys, and it's a joy to do with whoever may watch or listen to this. This is what we do. We're grateful to be a part of it, so we love it. So thanks for putting it together, James.
Absolutely. Emily, any closing thoughts?
You said it so great.
Yeah.
Amen to that. Thank you, Pastor Nate.
Yeah.
It's getting a little toasty in here. Yeah. Well, thank you, Emily. Thank you, Nate, for your time. Thank you for sharing your wisdom that me and you so humbly admitted is from the Lord, it's from experience and things like that. And Thrive and Divers, hopefully you've gleaned something from this, something that's encouraged you, challenged you, whatever it might be. I do recommend that book Pastor Nate referenced, The Self-Aware Leader by Terry Linhart. A great read if you're going into ministry or just life in general. But that's all we have for this episode of Thrive and Dive. This is Thrive and Dive, thriving in life as we dive into deeper conversations. Have a great rest of your day.